Welcome to Econ 102, where economist Noah Smith and I make sense of what's happening in the news, technology, business, and beyond through the lens of economics. Let's jump right in.
Last week, Noah hosted Paul Krugman for a casual video chat on No Opinion. In case you missed it, here's the conversation in full.
Random audience people. I'm here with the great Paul Krugman, who has recently left the New York Times and is now just writing independent Substack, which of course is the best way to write, as we know. And so we're going to talk about just that and also about the economy, obviously. So, hey.
Okay, lots of people are joining as we speak. I think it took a minute there for it to go live. So
Right.
For everybody out there, I'm Paul Krugman. Noah Smith is our host for this little dialogue, and let's hope that let's give it a minute.
Let's give people a couple minutes to show up.
Yeah, Noah was once a college professor. I still am, although I'm not teaching. I've taught my last class, and academic time is class actually starts 5 minutes after it says it starts because you wait for people to come on in. So let's give it a few more minutes. Anyway, no, it's interesting times. And
Yeah.
Okay, so we seem to have a lot of people here. So we can,
That's
some
right.
other people might arrive. So let's just go ahead.
It's a live stream. We just chill. It's not like a.
So
you left the Times. The Times actually called me up, or someone from the Times wrote to me and asked me if I wanted to be an op-ed columnist for the Times, and I said no.
That's interesting. Okay, some people have been saying, will they ask you? And I said they might, but that you would probably say no.
I did say no. I mean, so I gave two reasons. Number one was that I didn't want to have to deal with intra-company drama.
Yeah.
Like fights in the company Slack and staffer revolts and other things like that, which I've heard about a lot.
Okay, that never affected me. I was completely off that. I wrote for, but not at the Times. Wasn't part of any of that. But what was your other reason? I'm just curious because I can tell you about what motivated me.
Well, actually, I guess there are two other reasons. One is that I have realized how much better I write when I don't have editors, and I think that's not necessarily true for all writers. And I think especially journalists, like real reporters, actually probably do need an editor because it's more about the facts and getting things exactly right. And some people can, editors can help teach them how to write. But I already have a unique voice, and I think that when I write through an editor, it doesn't come through, and it sounds like someone else talking.
Okay.
And
Yeah. So you would probably have liked my old job. So when I started, I mean, actually, for me, about a dozen years ago, the Times, I really actually enjoyed working for the Times. There were, I was very, very lightly edited. Columns are, it's a very restrictive form. You get about, you have about 800 words, or actually 5,080 characters, including spaces. And so you have to say what you're going to say there, and you have to write for, an audience that is coming at you from a standing start. But there's a certain amount of pleasure in the craftsmanship in pulling that off. And I would, at that point, I had a copy editor, nothing more. And the copy editor would occasionally say, I don't think that you established this fact right, or I think the wording on this sentence was awkward, but that was about it. And so I was I was edited only in ways that were completely constructive. Um, and then I also had at that point a blog where I could uh, go, go and do more technical stuff, or just more, no need to adhere to the to the dignity of the paper or whatever. So it was a good arrangement. It was a little harder, but as I said, I kind of enjoyed the craft. But my job changed gradually over the years, and at this point, first of all, there's now at the Times 3 levels of editing. before it ever goes to the copy editor, there's an editor who makes much more substantial edits than ever before. I used to be Copy editors used to jokingly complain that they had no work to do because I came in clean at length with all my facts verified. But now a lot more editing, and then a layer of editing above that, which got very intrusive in the last year. So the column much less became a quite unpleasant experience, and they killed the blog in I think 2015, and I opened a Substack account, feeling the lack of a space to do stuff like that. At times said, no, you can't do that. And I said, well, I need some way to have longer form thoughts and an occasional chart. And so I had a newsletter at the times, which was far more constrained uh, than blogging or anything like that, but kind of kept me going. And then in September of last year, they said, "Well, you're writing too much," and eliminated the newsletter. So it was you would hate the job I had this past year. It was
I
not,
would.
I came to hate it as well. It just, maybe what they were doing made sense in terms of the Times' objectives. I don't know, but it was intolerable from my point of view.
Yeah. And I actually left Bloomberg. One of the several reasons I left Bloomberg was similar thing. They the old leadership left, and then they brought in new people who added one more layer of editing.
Yeah.
And it also, in addition to just being a real pain to go back and forth, and to chopping up the column so that it wasn't, it was kind of bland and dumbed down a bit. In addition to all that, it was late. We had to go through several layers of pitch approval to get everything through. And so by the time I was able to get something out, to write about something, it was no longer the top thing in the news. So if I was going to write about the LA wildfires, when they happened, I just sat down and wrote that, and then pressed send, which is how I do everything. But then at Bloomberg, it would have taken 4 days to get that out. And by that time, people would have been on to something else. So it really reduced the relevance, I felt.
Yeah, also a major consideration. I mean, even I had for a while a twice weekly newsletter at the Times, but it was on a fixed schedule, which meant now it didn't. That was actually much more lightly edited than the column, but still, what if news breaks that I really need to respond on a day that I don't have a newsletter scheduled? Then no way to respond, and so the delays, and yeah, whenever um, the there's partly an issue that the papers want, um, they want a beautiful graphics. They want everything, and also with the approval process, which so you have to sell uh, anything that goes beyond the simple column. The columns could be timely, but were highly restrictive in format, and then also then increasingly intrusive editing on content. And the newsletter wasn't what I wanted to do, so and the occasional long form piece. I mean, I'd had a piece on tariffs, which came out all right, and tariffs didn't go away as an issue, but that was like a month and a half in the construction because of all of that, and that's
Right.
so yeah, it's and there is a problem. I mean, uh, I don't exactly know what was going on with me with the Times. It's not clear that everyone was facing the same level of rewriting, and then me having to rewrite the rewrites that I was facing. So I don't know, and I don't know whether I was too progressive or just uh, too strong in tone, but um, but whatever it is, I think they've lost the thread of what commentary is supposed to be doing. You know, it's not supposed to be uncontroversial. It's supposed to. I always used to say, if I didn't get a lot of people angry with a column, then I'd wasted the space. You know,
It is opinion.
Yeah, it's opinion, and it should be. Yeah, I also one of my other lines was if I wrote a column where a third of the readers thought it was great, and a third hated my guts, and a third had no idea what I was talking about, that was a successful column.
That
Uh,
reminds me of Larry Summers' forecast for the economy.
oh well, yeah,
1/3 of every possibility.
yeah, but except yeah, but you're trying to get people.
No.
Yeah, it's let's not talk about.
You want things divided in this case.
You want
Um,
it's there. I mean, it's something that I haven't got the exact quote, but Keynes said something about words should be a little wild because they're the assault of thoughts on the unthinking, and that's kind of what you're trying to do. And if in opinion, obviously not if you're writing a here's what happened in Congress today, but uh, and but the in, and I was able to do that in the for much of my time for basically for like 23 years at the times I was able to do that
that
and
was that long. Damn,
yeah that's I'm
we
a
got old.
yeah well you didn't get a lot you're on your way but no I'm about to turn 72 here it's and what you can say um I mean, and look, I mean, it helped that you're probably at this point the premier economic substacker, and have shown what can be done with it. And I'm making a big push in a very we're different people with different ways of writing, but that it can be done, and the um, but look the interesting I had the the last time I had a serious problem with times management is ancient history. I wrote a bunch of columns saying we are being lied into war in Iraq, and which was pretty scary. And management was not happy. I was called into the publisher's office several times and urged to tone it down. And I suggested people they could hire to replace me. But the columns themselves went pretty much out as I wrote them. So it was never a lot of intervention in the actual writing. It was just kind of a, God, we thought we were hiring you to write about .coms, and now you're writing about the march to war, which is true, and it wasn't really, it
Right.
had to be done at the time, but the um, now anyway. So yeah, so there's this. I mean, and there's so much to be done. So much. I mean, I well, are you every day? Pretty much.
So I'm most days I found that the sweet spot was 4 to 5 a week. Um, when I did surveys, people always said it was evenly split between people who wanted 4 and people who wanted 5.
Okay.
And then I found that when I do more than 5, like I was doing 7, I was doing one every day for a while, and they were a little shorter because of that. But then as a result, people started unsubscribing, saying I can't keep up with the emails. I'm just getting too many emails. And email's the main distribution for a Substack, right? Like it's the power of Substack over traditional blogging is that people get it in their emails. They don't have to like set up an RSS feed or navigate to the site or whatever that they used to do. And so they just get it in their email every morning. And that's how I'd say most people actually read it. And people were getting too many. People don't like to have their inboxes deluged so much. So I realized that 4 to 5 was the sweet spot. So I aim for 4 to 5. And as a result, I started writing longer, slightly more in-depth things, so that people who wanted to could read a little more. So I think now my posts are maybe 2,500 words usually, whereas before they were more like 1,500 at the beginning. And so, yeah. But then I get to write more, which is good. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't hit steady states, and right now it's I've only been at this now for what is it, December 13th, the old December 11th, the Substack went live again, and at the moment I'm still there's just stuff that wants to be written. You know,
Right.
a few things are happening now, and as I guess everybody has noticed.
I've
Um,
I've seen some things happen.
And I kind of uh, just so I find myself I've had a Friday post, and then there's something that
Mhm.
just wants to get out, and so I end up so I mean I've had something every day for the past week. That's not a steady state, but
Right.
and mine are shorter. They are actually tend to be like 1,100 words.
Right. And I think mine started out that way, and then just got longer. And I think I've hit a nice equilibrium with about 2,000 to 2,500 words, because that allows me. I've sorry, I had the wrong charger next to my seat stupidly, and now I have to go get a better one.
Okay, well,
Um,
for everybody watching, this is life.
this is this is live. This is live. I'm just walking around my
uh,
house. You can
yeah,
see my rabbit if you want. He's here. He is.
well, there we are. Yeah.
So anyway,
Uh, uh,
sorry. I just mistook the charger.
yeah. No,
Uh,
that's the. I'm almost at the fully USB-C life now. Um, Working on it, but yeah. But yeah, it's interesting. The Times thought I was writing too much, and now I'm writing about 3 times as much as I was for them, and I'm having if you know absolutely no shortage of topics. The hardest part is, although that's been working okay so far as well, as I'm finishing each post with a musical performance, and am I going to run out of music? But so far so good. And yeah, I mean the thing about, I mean, this is a new world. We're all trying to figure it out. My sense is that, um, do we still say mainstream media, legacy media, whatever we want to say, that they haven't quite uh, grasped that they're still thinking that of themselves as the establishment, and needing to, even in opinion, appear sober and balanced and a bit boring. And the trouble is, we're now in a not in that kind of world. There is no establishment. It's a fight for people's attention. There are many places they can turn. It's also crazy times. I mean, it's a if you aren't scared, then you're not paying attention. And that's just a yeah. This is so. Here we go, and it's been uh, uh, I mean, I'm having uh, I'm a little embarrassed, feeling guilty, because I'm actually having a great deal of fun. The world is going to hell, and I'm having fun writing what I want to write. So, but it's quite something.
We'll continue our interview in a moment after a word from our sponsor. What does the future hold for business? Ask 9 experts and you'll get 10 answers. It's a bull market. It's a bear market. Rates will rise or fall. Can someone invent a crystal ball? Until then, over 41,000 businesses have future-proofed their business with NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 cloud ERP, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, HR into one fluid platform. With one unified business management suite, there's one source of truth, giving you the visibility and control you need to make quick decisions. With real-time insights and forecasting, you're peering into the future with actionable data. When you're closing the books in days and not weeks, you're spending less time looking backwards and more time on what's next. If I had needed this product, it's what I'd use. Whether your company is earning millions or even hundreds of millions, NetSuite helps you respond to immediate challenges and seize your biggest opportunities. Speaking of opportunity, download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning at netsuite.com/102. The guide is free to you at netsuite.com/102. netsuite.com/102. Most of you probably know how much the Turpentine team loves Notion, the sponsor of today's episode. We use it every day for editorial planning, transcript markups, project managing, knowledge sharing, and it's where I drop random 3 a.m. ideas that turn into episodes. Now it has the power of AI, built right inside of Notion and woven across our entire workspace. It's been a total game changer for our productivity and focus. We just used it the other day to architect the content schedule for next month across our network. Notion combines your notes, docs, and projects into one space that's simple and beautifully designed. The fully integrated Notion AI helps you work faster, write better, and think bigger, doing tasks that normally take you hours in just seconds. Try Notion for free when you go to notion.com/upstreampod. That's all lowercase letters. Notion.com/upstreampod to try the powerful, easy to use Notion AI today. And when you use our link, you're supporting our show. That's notion.com/upstreampod.
I do feel that the vibe is now everything is going to hell and everything is crazy, and yet it's kind of fun. Whereas the vibe in the 2010s, the mid 2010s, late 2010s, was basically, this is the fate of the world. Either America will reckon with its racist past and refound the nation upon anti-racist principles, or we will fall into fascism and darkness and blah blah blah. And every tweet that you write is a battle in this war. You just got to put your back into it. And this is the moment when we decide. And now people are just like, you know what, stuff's going to hell, but I'm having fun and riding the wave of crazy. And I was not really alive for this, but I feel like that was the vibe of the early 80s. That it was that in some ways we're getting back, or maybe the late 70s when and you were alive for this and I wasn't. But how much does this era resemble the late 70s? You had this conservative resurgence throughout America. The right wing was really on the march in the late 70s and early 80s, and yet you had and then you had this sort of dramatic era of great power confrontation where we thought we might have nuclear war with the Soviet Union, and Brezhnev seemed like he was on the march, and the world seemed like it was getting less free in the 70s, and a lot of people thought there was going to be like some global revolution still, but yet people in America were just kind of exhausted. This is what I hear from my dad, who is the same age as you, and other people. What do you
No,
think?
see, I was there was a lot of bad stuff going on, and there were, but no, I'm scared now in a way I wasn't, and in fact, I do think that fascism is a real possibility right now, and I did not feel that in the Reagan years. It was just a completely uh, there were bad people, and some of them almost comically bad. I mean, I was actually in the Reagan administration. I was a senior staff at the Council of Economic Advisors, which was just sub-political level. I was a senior international economist. The senior domestic economist was Larry Summers. Um, but that was the thing. There was the loyalty test. If Marty Feldstein wanted what he thought were the best technical experts he could get, that was okay. And while there were some very weird people in the Reagan administration, there was also a strong sense that there were rules. I mean, I'd be in these, sort of second tier interagency meetings, and um, or even sitting behind Martin Feldstein's chair at cabinet level meetings, and somebody would have some idea, and the guy from the U.S. Trade Representative's office said that would be illegal under the GATT. For listeners, the 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 General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which governs international, supposed to govern what countries can do by way of tariffs and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
and if USTR said that's GATT illegal, end of discussion. We have treaties, we honor those treaties, and that's not at all obviously where we are now. So no, it was very, very different. Now it's true that I think people in some sense uh, have realized that or at least I and my friends have realized that if you spend every waking moment on we need to talk about how scary and awful uh, the Trump administration is. That's a recipe for exhaustion. It's not even productive. So you need to be doing more stuff. Um, but
We did that for 4 years. We had constant resistance to Trump for
well,
4 years.
and which kind of worked, and then so that, but we need something. You need to mix it up a bit, and you need to build, certainly as individuals, you need to build a base of saying I can do more than just that, because lots of people are doing that, but hopefully there's something else you can say. And I mean, and also, I mean, to keep your sanity, you have to keep some sense of the absurdity of it all. I mean, let's see. I wonder if I step aside, you can see. No, if I raise it a bit, you can see the. I really can't. There is a bottle of gin on the sideboard behind me, which is purely in honor of Pete Hegseth. But no, but the uh, yeah,
I
but
said he's a Secretary of Defense. You'd really like to have 40 beers with.
uh, yeah. It was the three gin and tonics with breakfast that really got me. But anyway, um,
So Japan had a guy like this. Back in the 2000s, Japan had this foreign minister, Nakagawa Shoichi, who was just like plastered at every diplomatic meeting he went to and eventually died at one of them
oh,
from
all
alcohol
right.
poisoning.
I mean,
And
that sort of thing. I mean, there are levels of. I won't tell you who because that could be liable. But during the God, you were an infant, but during the exchange rate mechanism crisis in Europe, 1992, uh, I had uh, I had breakfast with one of Europe's central bankers, and you could smell his breath from across the table. I mean, he was obviously drinking his way through the crisis. So,
oh my gosh,
uh, no, I mean, and we know that Nixon spent his last several weeks completely plastered. So,
completely
but
glass.
uh,
And Grant, I mean, Grant was famously alcoholic. He struggled with it his whole life.
yeah, but he
He was a nicer guy.
never when it mattered. No, I'm a huge Grant groupie. Actually, that's a whole other story. But I think he was, you know, he tried to be a good president, and he was
Yeah.
uh,
But
one.
he wrote about it
Uh-huh.
privately, and it was getting worse as he got
Yeah.
older.
No, I know, and it's uh, well, but
I'm just concerned about the selection process. Like I think Hegseth is just he's there to like de-wokeify culture war, blah blah blah, the military. Um,
no,
but I think that the fact that he was selected shows bad things about the personnel selection process, where they don't, yes, he's an alcoholic, okay, fine, but they don't care. They don't care if he's an alcoholic. They don't, people got on Grant's case constantly about it, and he was on his own case. But in Hegseth's case, nobody, none of the Trump people care at all that he has this problem.
Oh, I don't think that's right. I think it's considered an asset. They
An
are
asset, okay, fine, but
uniformly selecting people with deep personal flaws. It's sort of you have to have a substance abuse problem, a sex abuse problem, or a corruption problem, or preferably all three to be on their list. And there's actually something to. I mean, whereas
that's not true.
Reagan,
Rubio.
Rubio, but yeah, he's just mild. He's just but the off.
All the assistant secretaries seem good though. All the number twos seem good. So I think my hypothesis is that we might be migrating toward this Japanese British model of like the minister, in those countries is in charge, but they're actually just a political liaison, and the person who really runs the thing is the vice minister.
Well, it might be, except that in Britain they're civil servants, and here they are still political
That's right.
appointees, and
They're
that's
still appointees.
worrisome. And
Right, but when you look at who it is, they're a lot more reasonable people than the people at that point being appointed at the top.
yeah, the top, but it's clearly it's meant to make a statement,
Yeah,
and it's meant to ensure loyalty. I mean, uh, I assume you've seen Oppenheimer, the movie.
I have not actually. I have not
Oh,
seen Oppenheimer.
no, you missed it. It's a fabulous movie, and but there's one point in which General Groves, who plays the bluff military guy who doesn't
Leslie
understand,
Groves, yeah.
but is in fact much smarter and with it. And there's a certain moment of um, where Oppenheimer says to him, in a moment of revelation, "You didn't hire me despite my communist ties. You hired me because of them, because they ensure that I'm going to,
Loyalty.
you can hold it over me." And I think that's very much part of what's going on here. But yeah, I mean, it really is. So no, look, it's scary, and I'm very happy to have white skin because given what's been happening, so far they're fairly limited, but it's pretty clear from what's going on and not close to you, what's going on in the Central Valley, that Border Patrol are just kind of pulling people over because they look like they're the wrong race. And
Well, that's how we did it in the 50s, and that's how we did it in the 30s. The last two times that we did this.
yeah, and it's but and we'll see about anyway. This is no. I'm. It's funny. I went through. I mean, I was appalled by a lot of stuff during the Reagan years, but never felt that the system was in danger. Never felt that democracy was in danger. There was this little, possible nuclear war thing, but aside from that, I was pretty calm. And now it's,
Well, that was more like the international tensions we're seeing with China and Russia now.
yeah, but no, now it's internal, and we really have no idea where how deep this will go. That
Yeah.
um, uh, yeah, I'm writing about deportations for tomorrow, and
Mhm.
my theory there is I don't know what Trump really intends, but it may not matter. I think he's unleashed something that will spin out of control. That we're going to see vigilantism. That the message that ICE and the Border Patrol have taken is that it's open season, and we'll see. I could be wrong about that, but it's very
I think
different.
you're right that will happen. Those things will happen. I think that it will annoy some people, and there will be mild, diffuse disapproval of it that will slightly hurt Trump in the midterms. I think overall people are going to tolerate it.
Oh, I think people will tolerate the deportations per se. They won't tolerate the consequences. Uh, Essentially,
Inflation.
the agricultural workforce is for all practical purposes entirely immigrant. About half of them are undocumented, and given what's been happening in these recent raids, um, uh, legal residents get swept up along with
Yeah.
the undocumented. So I
Yeah.
think the effect on agricultural production, the effect on construction, is going to be pretty serious. Yeah,
I never thought leopards would eat my face. Said
that's right.
you know.
I wonder how many of our listeners know that, but that was one of the
Yeah.
just sort of this isolated internet meme that somehow just worked. Yeah, but yes, um, and the um, and then there's the question. I mean, how much the uh, something like McCarthyism in wider walks of life. Uh, and that that was really pretty bad. Although what was odd was I don't think anybody ever really thought that Joe McCarthy was going to bring down the Constitution. It's just that he ruined a lot of people's lives. But now it comes back in a different context. So
Well,
um,
I mean, arguably, what J. Edgar Hoover did in the Red Scare, and Arnold Palmer, and some of those people, like that arguably that was unconstitutional at the time. It's just people, no one cracked
oh, of
down on it.
course, yeah,
So
that's
this would be the anti DEI push. I think has more in common with the Red Scare of the 20s than with the McCarthyism of the 50s.
yeah, and this requirement that federal employees inform on their colleagues who are practicing DEI is
Who's
unbelievable.
who's practicing DEI? Are you doing DEI?
Yeah. So, but but meanwhile, uh, I gosh, I my one of my old professors was F.C. Delmar, who'd been through a lot, he talked about some of the stuff that came out of the uh, during the interregnum when Russians were still able to do economics before Stalin completely clamped down. He said there was a lot of interesting stuff. That bad times produce good economics, and yeah, that's certainly
It's
true
in
for
Argentina.
Russia.
All these great macroeconomists from Argentina.
Yeah, that's right. Argentina has got a circuit of people who have really interesting things to say, and are completely ignored by successive politicians. Uh, God, I
Well,
miss.
I don't know. I mean, Malay, actually, the economists I talked to were pretty upset about Malay, even if they were generally in favor of austerity and whatnot. But they were also thought Malay was this wild man, and yet Malay's getting great results. I'm impressed
Well,
by Malay. Like inflation is down, growth is up, and like stuff's actually doing okay in Argentina, and I'm astonished by that. But I'm happy too because Argentina deserves a break.
Well, I've been around. Uh, what he's doing is not very different from the convertibility law that supposedly permanently said 1 peso, $1 forever, and introduced a new,
Right. Sure.
and that worked pretty well for a few years, and then blew up spectacularly. So I
He
think,
did. He did austerity too.
yeah, well, they did that too. The Argentine blow up in 2001 was
Yeah.
not because of runaway fiscal deficits. It was because ultimately a, a peg to the dollar was not sustainable for a country that
Yeah.
is sort of a very long way from America.
But
Um,
he's not going to peg. Malay's not going to peg to the dollar.
I think he said he would, and then he didn't. So we'll see. If
Yeah.
but
No. No.
we'll have to see
That.
how it all plays out. But gosh, I miss the days when political and economic crises happened in other countries. Um, I mean,
I mean, but knock on wood, because America, our productivity growth is stronger than anybody's. Our we inflation. There's still inflationary pressures, but it's not that high. Like it's what 3%, and
no,
then
and that's exaggerated. No, if you look at that's legacy owner's equivalent rent. If you
yeah,
measure
yeah, legacy.
inflation the way
Yeah, it's
everyone
not even
else
that bad.
does it, it's 2 point.
Yeah, our macroeconomy's fine. Like, and I'm concerned that Trump might screw it up, which I think we should is a thing we should talk about. But but overall, like, I don't feel a sense of economic crisis in America, and I
Oh
think
no,
that all the people who said that for the election were really just using it as a stalking horse because they're upset about wokeness and culture wars or just general exhaustion from like the political culture, social media, whatever. And so they said, "Oh, inflation, the price of eggs, blah blah blah." When really, as soon as Trump got elected, all the Republicans stopped caring about inflation, even though inflation didn't change.
no, that's right. No, it was all vibes, and you can see that. I mean, if you look at the at the surveys, self-identified. I mean, there was both parties. Their assessment, not just of the future, but of the current economy, changed radically with the election. But as always, much stronger effect with Republicans. So all of a sudden, Republicans think that the economy is great, even though it's the same
No.
economy that it was a month
It's
before.
about I think 150% as strong in Republicans as Democrats now. If you look at the recent change in inflation expectations that they just published.
So, except that, well, I'd say it's actually probably twice as strong because there is some reason to believe with the tariffs that inflation will go up. So Democrats are directionally right,
Mm.
though
Yeah.
exaggerated. But anyway, it no, but it's pretty no. Although here, look, the U.S. has amazing productivity, and we beat inflation at essentially no cost, which is great. We have really good productivity. Our GDP is fine. Some other things, it's, compared with other advanced countries, we're substantially richer. We also die a lot sooner. And, sort of, I would think that US life expectancy is way below other advanced countries, and the gap is growing. And I would think that part of the quality of life is not being dead. And that happens to be one of the places where Trump so far is doing really terrible stuff. Is basically just frozen medical research. Uh, and we don't know, for the moment, it's actually literally just come to a dead halt. And national institutes of health are effectively shut down. So that's not going to improve. Uh, but you know, we, but I have to say there is a temptation, which I have to fight myself. Of if you think that this is a really terrible administration, to expect instant gratification, to expect everything to go to hell right away, and uh, America is this vast. Uh,
There's a lot of ruin in the country.
Great deal of ruin. That's an Adam Smith quote for listeners. That there's an enormous amount of dynamism and creativity and flexibility. Now, a lot of that actually does come from immigrants, but still, it will take quite a lot. And America can a lot of what we are uh, will take a lot of work to ruin. And now these guys may be willing to put in that work, but meanwhile, and but wow. but yeah, I mean, everybody I know, and of course, people I know tend, not everybody, but tend to be high socioeconomic status, and interesting jobs, and we're all kind of saying, "Ugh, uh, I I feel guilty. Not obviously I'm having fun with the Substack, but just in general, um, this is really scary. They're doing terrible things, and meanwhile, I'm planning my next trip to Italy, and sort of
We're
it
the
is
out of touch
fun stuff.
elite.
What's right?
We're the out of touch elite.
Yeah, well, it's although it's ordinary people as well. I mean, there's been a lot of the people. You ask people how's the economy, they say it's terrible and it's awful and I can't afford anything. Oh, and by the way, I've just spent $300 for Taylor Swift tickets. So there's a lot of I mean, the core Trump constituency is actually the people who are sort of most uh, and consistently hard right Republicans are small, our local small business people uh, who are
The
doing
car dealer
fine.
is the archetypical Republican.
What's right? Yeah,
Car dealers are the
yeah, car
archetypical
dealers,
Republican
car
constituency.
dealers, and car
Even
dealers.
Hunter S. Thompson was writing this in the 80s. He was like, "We're a nation of car dealers now."
Well, and that's Rick Perlstein has done that a lot. This is where it all kind of comes from, and and they're doing fine. Although I will
Mhm.
say we're still nursing along our 2009 Volkswagen, and uh, kind of outraged at what new cars cost these days. Uh, Mostly because not, I mean, mostly because they don't make modest cars anymore, which is actually turning out to be a bit of a problem. But anyway,
Hmm.
We'll continue our interview in a moment after a word from our sponsors. Every time I hop on the 101 freeway in SF, I look up at the various tech billboards and think, damn, turpentine should definitely be up there. And I bet I'm not alone. In a world of endless scrolling and ad blockers, sometimes the most powerful way to reach people is in the real world. That's where AdQuick comes in. The easiest way to book out-of-home ads, like billboards, vehicle wraps, and airport displays. The same way you would order an Uber. Started by Instacart alums, AdQuick was born from their own personal struggles to book and measure ad success. AdQuick's audience targeting, campaign management, and analytics bring the precision and efficiency of digital to the real world. Ready to get your brand the attention it deserves? Visit adquick.com today to start reaching your customers in the real world. Again, that's adquick.com.
We could talk about manufacturing, or we could talk about inflation, macroeconomics. What's your pleasure?
I think manufacturing is more interesting because you and I wrote what people I think wrongly think are conflicting posts.
Yeah, yes, I noticed that they're not conflicting.
Right.
Like,
You're
we don't
saying
disagree.
that Americans can do manufacturing well, which I totally agree with.
Yeah,
Um, this notion that I mean, this is all of these. The TSMC can't run a plant in America because American workers are lazy and shiftless. That turns out not to be true.
yep,
Um,
not to
uh,
be true.
and so we're perfectly capable of doing it, but the macroeconomics of say that the size of your manufacturing sector is dictated sort of by the total demand for manufactured goods plus or minus the trade balance, and
Right.
even if we could eliminate our trade deficit in manufacturers, which we can't, but if we even if we could.
And for the audience, why can't we?
We can't because it would take, but certain Trump's policies are not going to do that. Trump is going to put on tariffs, but tariffs uh, tend to raise the value of the dollar. So whatever you save on imports is at least partially offset by less exports. Plus, other countries have agency. There will be retaliation. Even if Trump goes on about Canada, but it turns out that Canada actually runs a trade deficit in manufactured goods with the United States. Their overall trade surplus with us is about oil, which we don't want to stop importing, and so there will be retaliation. And anyway, it just and fundamentally. So approximately, and a little bit of investment income, but never mind this. Trade balance plus capital account balance equals zero. The trade deficit is equal to the amount of capital flowing into America, and America is an attractive place to invest. We have this great productivity growth, and so money is going to be flowing in, and the counterpart of that has to be a trade
Do you
deficit.
agree with the idea that the reserve currency is closely related to this because people park their money here because it's reserve currency?
No, it's first of all, it just doesn't match the facts. If you look at when the U.S. trade deficit exploded in the 90s, not because of the reserve currency, but because we were ahead of the game on applying IT, and we were an attractive destination in general. Uh, it's funny.
I mean, it's obviously not the only thing going on, but then
I think it's
you don't
true.
think exorbitant privilege is a real thing?
There's a little bit. We can get, we get a lot of we get a large zero interest loan from the uh, uh, 800 billion or whatever it is. I'm making this up because I don't have the number straight to my head of mostly $100 bills that are being held by drug lords and all that outside the United States. And we possibly are able to borrow at slightly lower rates, but it's really just not I mean, Britain has run consistent current account deficits, and the pound stopped being a reserve currency 50 years ago. The Australia has run massive current account deficits year after year. This so I study with I can't source this quote, although he said it, but Charlie Kindleberger used to say that anyone who spends any amount of time thinking about international money goes a little mad. That you start to think that things like the dollar as a reserve currency are really important things in the world, when all of the objective evidence really suggests that it's pretty marginal, that it's there people are going to use something for international transactions, and dollars are the natural thing, but how much that's worth to the United States is probably not a big deal. And uh, the no, I mean, so no, uh, I actually just put up on the Substack. I'm giving a talk at a webinar at Princeton. Is webinar actually anywhere? But a webinar hosted by people at Princeton anyway. And I put up the slides with a little voiceover commentary, and about all of this stuff. And uh, there's this belief that some people are saying that there's something unnatural about the fact that we have large trade imbalances in today's world. But in fact, there were large trade imbalances before World War One, and then there was a long period when trade was mostly balanced, but that was because governments had capital controls in place everywhere. And when the capital controls were lifted in the 70s, we went back to a world of large trade imbalances. No, this is the idea that there's something weird about the fact that the U.S. runs a trade deficit. Um, is wrong.
Right.
And if we eliminated a, even if we could eliminate the trade deficit, manufacturing might go from 10% of GDP to 13%. But it used to be 30%, and that's not coming back.
Right. But is percentage of GDP the important measure there?
Well, there's a different issue, which you've written about, and I actually agree, which is having the manufacturing capacity to deal with strategic threats but that's about specific sectors. I don't think anyone cares, whether whether toy manufacturer or clothespin manufacturer comes back to America. Maybe
Well,
clothespin.
people didn't think toys were important until toys started blowing up everyone on the battlefields of Ukraine.
Well, this is true. I guess there's a question of what is a all right. Maybe
What
a
is
bad.
a fun?
No, I mean there is
And
something.
batteries, I mean, like people, there's this idea that batteries are for electric vehicles or batteries are for solar storage, whatever. But then a drone is simply a battery, an electric motor, and a couple chips, with some plastic injection molded parts. And that's what a drone is. And so then if China makes all the batteries, they make all the drones. And so the IRA, of course, was supposed to reshore batteries, and we were talking about how this was decarbonization, climate. That's how it was sold to progressives, and that's not wrong. But at the same time, if you were going to make a bill to say the United States has the battery manufacturing capacity to make drones and other like electric vehicles of war, which are going to be really important, then it would look like the IRA, or it look like the battery subsidy provisions of the IRA.
No,
And yeah,
yeah, no, I think that's right. And so you probably can't get if your idea is that we're going to go back to the days when big strong men worked on assembly lines and that was the typical job in America. That's not going to happen.
not going to
But
happen. Jobs wise, it's not going to happen.
what's right? Yeah, but
Yeah, I agree. I think people think that manufacturing is about percent of the economy and that it's about jobs, good union manufacturing, 1950s style assembly line jobs. It is not about either of those things. And I think that people like me who think that manufacturing is important have to make that point. And it's actually hard to make that point, because people are so used to thinking of like the disappearing factory jobs. They're such in this Rust Belt mindset, and that it's, and some people are in like a trade balance mindset, like we've got to win in this export market, things like that. And I'm like, we have to focus on like capacity to make strategic things.
yeah, that's right. I mean, with it, one thing that I really did not see coming was the return of conventional imperialism and wars of conquest. and and that's a and that is suddenly makes the issue of do you have the ability, are you dependent for strategically crucial manufactured goods on somebody who may be your enemy, may be invading, probably not the United States, but might be invading
Right.
Taiwan,
Right.
yeah, so I- in a way, I think Putin, in a backhanded way, may have done us a favor by telling us, "Hey,
Thanks, Vlad.
the world is a more dangerous place than you realized, and you better get your act together." Now, unfortunately,
Right.
I don't think the current. I think the Biden people basically understood that. I don't know what,
Jake Sullivan did.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have any idea what if anything the Trump people understand, but
The
uh,
Trump people that I know, like the tech people who were working with Trump and for Trump, they understand this well, but I don't know how much those guys are driving policy. Like I'll talk to like like some of these defense tech entrepreneur people, like the Anduril people, or like Joe Lonsdale, these guys, they really understand the importance of defense tech and of manufacturing stuff in America. But I don't know how much those people are driving policy. Um, yeah,
yeah, actually, one of the revelatory things, um, revelations I wish we didn't have to have, but there was a lot of, I mean, a lot of us were really very down on the defense industry. Uh, and, lots of, which does have, if you're going to look for waste, fraud, and abuse, that's probably where you're going to find it. But we have learned in Ukraine that at least many of these systems actually do work. Now, what is also true is that the
yeah.
homemade drones also work. So there's a whole other level which we are not ready for. But
There's the classic and the new,
yeah,
both are important.
uh, but no, I mean it's I'm wearing. I think it's Article 22 of the GATT. I think it's I can never remember which is which, but there is a national security article which basically says all of these things about rules about what you can do and what you can't do, and when a tariff is allowable and when it isn't, and um, um, uh, forget about all of those if national security is at stake. And I went my entire career until basically um, February 2022 thinking, well, nobody cares about that anymore. That's an irrelevant clause. And well, what do you know? It turns out that that's very, very real. And you need to some of my international economics sort of friends and colleagues still want us to go back to the kind of uh, uh, I don't know, Obama 2015, global economy, uh, not quite Davos man, but the sort of uh, the economic nationalism is always bad, and it can be. But on the other hand, we do live in the world we do, and it's there are uh, you know it's just yeah.
Right. Yeah. For so many years we just had this idea that if you defunded defense, you'd have the money to spend on other stuff. I dream of the day when the Air Force will have to hold a bake sale to buy a bomber, and we fund education. That was one of those bumper stickers everybody had back in like the '90s when I was a kid.
Yeah, well, there was I mean, even by the numbers, I have to deal with this quite a lot, or used to have to, with people who would normally be on my side saying, well, why can't we just pay for all of this by cutting defense? And the answer was, first of all, the defense budget is there for a reason. There's waste in there, but it's not all that big. The fact of the matter is that if you want to look for a program that you can cut and probably leave people no worse off, and free up some funds, try to stop the overpayments for Medicare Advantage. The defense is not a huge boondoggle, and it hasn't
Right.
been huge. In the days of Eisenhower, the defense dominated the budget, but these days it is the social insurance programs, which I approve of, but you gotta.
You once famously said that the United States is an insurance company with an army,
Yeah,
but
what's
now we're just
funny
an
is I
insurance
stole
company.
I stole that line, but everybody attributes it to me. But it's a good
Wait, who said that?
what? It was
Who said
originally
that first?
some guy named Peter Fisher, who was an undersecretary under Bush. But nobody remembers that. Everybody attributes it to me, and that encapsulates it. We're defense, which is one big chunk, and then you have roughly equal sized chunks for Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, and so some other stuff in there as well, but it's also kind of social insurance, and that's and if you ask, well, how can we afford all of that with this budget deficit? Well, the answer, which nobody wants to talk about, is with the U.S. is a low tax country, and we could certainly, there's some money from actually just plain enforcing the tax laws against the wealthy, and some more from raising rates. But all those social democracies in Europe that provide a much stronger safety net, they all have value added taxes that pay for it, and which is,
Basically, a fancy sales tax.
yeah, it's a fancy sales tax. It's and it has um, and people there consider it worth it. I mean, you go to Denmark, and people say, yeah, well, cost of living is high because we have a 20 something percent VAT. But on the other hand, I don't have to worry about health expenses. I don't have to worry about being impoverished if I lose my job. Or yeah, it's but all right, we're a long way from being politically ready to do that in the United States. And the good thing, I guess, is, assuming that Trump doesn't make himself president for life, is that,
Doesn't have that much more life left.
well, that too. But that we don't go to one party rule, which is, I think, much more of a possibility. That, but we can raise a lot of money for good stuff just by reversing his outrageous tax cuts for the wealthy.
For me, and now you, so we are now pass through businesses.
Sorry.
We are pass through businesses. Substack.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. The Substack, because I haven't even thought about. We actually looked into it because Robin, my wife, and I, our biggest source of income is actually textbook royalties, and it turns out um, that's not a pass-through business by the law,
Right.
and it also
Yeah.
turns out that the carried interest loophole, which is which Wall Street guys justify on the grounds that, well, it may be kind of earned income, but they're taking on a big risk. Well, devoting 5 years of your life to writing a principles textbook is also taking on a lot of risk. But
Yeah,
somehow
that's the most
we don't
DS
we don't
excuse.
get
Carried interest loophole is terrible.
we don't get to treat it as capital gains. So
All
that's
right, so I have two things.
we're at
Oh,
almost at almost at an hour, so at some point we probably have to stop.
we are almost an hour. There's two things that I want. I want to ask. Number one, the last question about manufacturing is if we want to improve manufacturing, especially for strategic sectors, including upstream sectors like batteries and mineral processing, what are the most effective policies that we can do?
Okay, I mean, just in general, the old standard trade policy argument I think still applies. Um, Subsidies. Uh, I mean, the IRA was the correct kind of thing. That a tariff is like a subsidy combined with a sales tax. And why uh, those are separate things. Your goal is to increase production, and so the general rule for interventionist policies is target, surgical. Figure out what it is you want to accomplish and spend money on that. Now, in practice, it's we well, no, I mean that's actually kind of what the Biden people did. They left the Trump tariffs in place because that was not a fight they wanted to take on, but they didn't introduce new tariffs. They just introduced quite a lot of industrial subsidies, and that's the way to do it. I mean, to a large extent, actually, that's what China does. China has a lot. They do a lot of things wrong, but they do have a lot of industrial subsidies rather than tariffs, and that's a targeted policy. And yeah, I mean, and look, industrial policy is an American invention. It's Alexander Hamilton, and that's
Yeah,
and we had huge arguments in the 80s about can we do industrial policy? Do we have enough information? Can we identify the right sectors? Won't it be corrupted? Which is still an issue. But at this point, I think between the strategic argument, above all the strategic argument, we do have a pretty good idea of which sectors should be targeted. So yeah, I mean, give me uh, a sophisticated, well, a moderate Republican, but I don't think they've been hunted to extinction. But give me a Democratic president and an actually sane Congress and an industrial policy aimed at promoting strategically important manufacturing makes a lot of sense. And
yeah, yeah. All right, that's great. And so before we go, I have a piece of advice for
yeah,
Substack. Which my main piece of Substack advice is that don't paywall too many posts,
oh,
because when people start to think of your blog as mostly paid with the occasional free post, then people stop reading it.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah, no, thanks. I mean, I mean, I wasn't actually expecting to make any money at all from this.
Okay.
The Substack was to having felt that I needed to leave the Times was a way of getting my voice out. And then, uh, well, Substack, they have a conflict of interest, but they urged me to have at least to have a paid subscriber option,
Great.
and I'm trying to have a few goodies so that people who pay do get something in return. But no, this is going to be overwhelmingly free. This is not I'm not hurting for money, and although we'll see. One thing we're wondering is how many universities will cancel our textbook sales in the new political environment. Even though the textbook itself is scrupulously neutral, but we'll see. But but no, that's right. This is mostly. I mean, it is amazing to see that you can actually make some money off of this, but that's not what this is about. This is
Yeah.
about being your own voice, communicating. You've done a spectacular job at that.
Thank
I,
you.
uh, it's a little invidious. I've got to add 150,000 or so subscribers to catch up with you still, but that's
Your Substack will be much more read than mine soon.
I don't know, but it's wonderful. I mean, and that's, by the way, the whole world of intellectual discourse has changed, right? The gatekeepers are kind of gone. There are these options. It's not democratic. That's one of the big things people imagined about the internet was that it would mean that everybody gets a say. But the fact of the matter is, there's limited attention, and it ends up being very hierarchical. In fact, I love to see. My bet is that the number of subscribers to Substacks follows the power law. and with a pretty steep exponent. But I guess most of your listeners have no idea what I'm talking about. But it's like the
I mean,
district.
everybody will read a few peeps.
But it's
Everybody will read a few sometimes.
but there is kind of free entry. It's people, important sounding people with good tailors don't get to limit what gets communicated, which is a really good thing.
Which is not to say that we shouldn't have good tailors, because as Twitter's fashion guru guy would remind us, tailoring is important.
Not just him, also my wife, who said you have to replace those suits there. So which I have done. I mean, I wear
Nice.
them once every 2 or 3 months, but yes.
Nice. All right. Well, anyway, we should let people go. This has been great. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, this has been fun. Terrific. Take care.
Awesome. Take care.
Econ 102 is a podcast from Turpentine, the network behind Moment of Zen, In the Arena, The Cognitive Revolution, and more. If you like what you hear, subscribe and leave us a review in the App Store. You can keep up with both of our Substacks for written analysis of the topics we cover in the show at noahopinion.substack.com and erictornberg.substack.com. Thanks for listening.